So, the politicians are out and about on what used to be called the stump ahead of the local and European elections in less than 2 weeks' time. But without wanting to depress you on a damp Sunday morning, the party strategists are already hard at work on their campaign plans for the general election next May. Yes, less than a year to go. They may have taken their time, but Labour's battle plan for 2015 is starting to take shape. As well as promising to freeze your energy bills and reintroduce the 50p rate of tax, Ed Miliband now says he wants to intervene in the housing market to keep rents down. There's even talk that the party leadership wants to bring more railway lines into public ownership. And Labour's gambling that its big push on the cost of living will see it through to the general election, despite evidence that growth is firmly back. Labour's campaign chief, Douglas Alexander, hopes it all adds up to victory next May. But so far the evidence it's hitting home is pretty thin. One survey today shows that 56% of people don't think Mr Miliband is up to the job of Prime Minister. As we head towards one of the least predictable general elections in 70 years, has Labour got a message to win seats up and down the country? Labour's election coordinator, Shadow Foreign Secretary Douglas Alexander joins me now. Welcome to the Sunday Politics.
Good morning.
A lot of these policies that have been announced, they poll pretty well. They're popular with the country. When you add them all up together, it is a move to the left, and what would be wrong with that?
Well, I think as your package suggests, the contours of the coming campaign are now becoming clear. And our judgment as the Labour Party is that the defining issue of the coming year in British politics will be the widening gap between the wealth of the country and the finances of ordinary families. We do believe it will be a cost of living election. And of course, we've been setting out our thinking in relation to energy prices, in relation to rents, but you'll hear a lot more from the Labour Party in the coming 12 months because we're now less than a year away from that decisive moment.
We both know, though, that if a leftish think tank had suggested any of these policies in the Blair years, you would have opposed them.
Well, let's be clear, we are not going for a sectional interest. We're seeking to secure a majority. And the only way you can secure a majority in modern Britain is not simply to appeal to your base, but also to appeal to the centre ground. I believe we've got a genuine opportunity over the next year. As your other report indicated, you've got the Conservatives in a death struggle with UKIP on the right of politics. You've got the Liberal Democrats at about 9% trying to find their base. There is a genuine opportunity in the next year for Labour to dominate the centre ground of British politics and so secure the majority Labour government that we're working and planning for in the coming year.
I notice you didn't deny that you would have opposed them. But let me move on. You say you're moving beyond your core, but I wonder if you've got a real message for aspirational voters to the south. Let me show you what John Denham used to be a close aide to Mr Miliband. He's not one of the usual suspects. He's a Labour loyalist, intelligent man. Even he thinks you're talking too much to your core vote. We are simply not on the agenda for most southern voters. Outside the target seats, most voters don't think about voting Labour.
Oh, well, he's right to recognise we took a terrible beating in 2010. If you recollect, we got 29%.
What he's saying is you're not appealing to these people now.
Well, if you look at what we've done just in the last week, for example, the signature policy on rents that Ed announced to launch Labour's local government and European election campaign, there are now more than 9 million people in the country in the private rented sector, more than 1 million families. Now, many of those families are in the south and southeast who are seeing circumstances where suddenly a landlord will choose to increase their rent and they've got all of the pressures involved in schooling, healthcare and other choices facing their families. So I think it's important, both in terms of policy and in terms of politics, that we speak to the whole country, not simply to one part of the country.
What was the average rise in rents last year?
I don't have that figure. Can you tell me?
1%.
Right, and you would accept that rents have risen significantly over recent years?
Not in real terms, no, 1% last year.
OK, well,
so
if you look at what's happened...
I'm not quite sure what the problem is.
But if you look at what happened to real wages in recent years, we are facing, for the first time, circumstances where people are going to be worse off, up to £1,600 a year worse off at the end of this Parliament than at the beginning of the Parliament. And frankly, if our political opponents want to argue that somehow the economy is healed, that they deserve a victory lap for the next 12 months, well, frankly, good luck to them. Because actually what we are hearing from the British public, not just in the north, but also in the south, is that the cost of living crisis is real and continues to affect families.
Well, there was certainly nothing aspirational about your party election broadcast for the European elections. For many people, it looked like just crude class war. Let's see a clip.
Bedroom tax.
Isn't it going to look bad that 2/3 of those affected are disabled?
Who cares? They can't fight back.
Absolutely.
Now, shall we lay off some NHS nurses?
Oh, NHS?
The National Health Service?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Who said that?
Me?
My gosh. The man has shrunk. He's actually shrunk. What should we do with him?
Can we hunt him?
So nothing about Europe, nothing about Labour policy. Now, you said that the Tories would resort to negative campaigning and smear. You didn't tell us you're going to be just as bad.
Well, let's start with the issue of party election broadcast. The one thing that is almost guaranteed to have most people reaching for the remote these days are the words that say, there now follows a party election broadcast. And I make no apology as a Labour Party for saying we need to be innovative in how we seek to present the kind of issues that people
smearing,
face.
isn't it?
Well, it's factual. It was a policy-based critique of this government and the Liberal Democrats' role within
So
that
it's
government.
factual then. So let's just say you're claiming it's factual. To portray the Cameron cabinet is not even knowing what the NHS is. You have it agreeing to attack the disabled because, quote, the disabled can't fight back. This of a Prime Minister who had a severely disabled son and was treated throughout his short life by the NHS.
It is a fact.
You've gone into the gutter, haven't you?
No, it's a fact that many, many disabled people across the country, including in my constituency, have been directly affected by the bedroom tax. And ultimately, this Conservative-led government, including the Liberal Democrats, will be held accountable by the British electorate.
Fight back. You say that of a Prime Minister who had a severely disabled son. Are you not ashamed of that?
I shadowed Ian Duncan Smith for 5 months, and my colleagues have continued to do so since. They don't have the excuse of saying somehow nobody told them the consequences of the bedroom tax. They went into this with their eyes open. They knew absolutely the consequences in terms of the hardship and the difficulty. Listen, if there were one-bedroom properties available across the country for people to move into, then their argument might have more force. They knew the fact that they were seeking to impoverish some of the poorest and most vulnerable people.
Did you sign off that party?
Of course I'd seen it, and I stand by the fact. Of course I stand by the fact
and you don't
that
want
disabled
to
people are
apologise
affected by the bedroom tax. I wish David Cameron and I wish Ian Duncan Smith would apologise to the disabled people of the country and many of the poorest people in the country for the effects of the bedroom tax. And I hope that we get that apology between now and the election.
So you aren't, as a son of the man, someone that thinks integrity is important in politics, you aren't ashamed of this kind of gutter propaganda?
Well, I think it's important that we scrutinise the policies of this government as well as setting out a positive agenda for change in the coming year, and we're going to do both.
So you won't promise then that this is the last time we'll see such a negative personal campaign?
I don't accept it's negative and personal to scrutinise the policies of the government. I'm less interested.
So we'll get more of this.
I'm less interested in the backgrounds of the cabinet than the choices that the cabinet are making for.
PEB. You made them all out to be 1950s upper-class twits.
Well, listen, it's for the British public to make a judgment in terms of the British
cabinet. But that's how you
at the
depicted
moment.
them.
Well, let's be clear. We were holding them accountable for policies on the bedroom tax, policies on the National Health Service, policies on taxation, and they've got a record that they're going to have to defend. I think one of the reasons that they're so fearful of this election is actually because they know they've got a pretty hopeless record.
Let's look at another part of your election campaign up here, this poster that's been doing the rounds, particularly digitally, but also on the back of trucks as well. On that shopping basket, can you tell us which items take the full 20% VAT?
It's representative of household shopping, which includes, of course, items like the household cleaning products. We know that food is not vatable, but
so why
we
did
also
you put it on?
Because people don't go to the supermarket on a Saturday, Andrew, and say this is vatable and this is non-vatable.
No, but they know
it's
that
a visual representation of the weekly shop.
And vegetable. Yeah, but there's no way that VAT's gone up by very much on that representative basket.
So you're denying that £450 extra has been paid by average families on a shopping bill during the year?
Well, where did you get that figure? Because let's just come on to that to see if your arithmetic's right. For an average family to pay £450 a year extra in VAT, they'd have to spend £21,600 a year on vatable products at 20%. The average take-home pay is only £21,000, and they've got to spend it on all sorts of things that are zero vatted.
So you don't accept that in addition to the items that we've shown here, there's a whole range of products that people could face in terms of VAT?
Well, how could an average family with disposable of income of £21,000 a year spend £21,600 a year on 20% vatable items?
But it doesn't say that it's an annualised figure, does it? They put £450 extra on your shopping bill.
So if it's not annualised, when is it?
When did they increase VAT, Andrew?
No, if it's not annualised, when is it?
Well, they increased VAT early in this Parliament, and there's a figure which is calculated over the course of the Parliament.
So that's for the whole of the Parliament?
To interpret it. Yes, there'll be more than £450 in the course of the Parliament.
And you've chosen to illustrate this with a shopping basket that has almost no VAT on it at all.
Well, people will be using shopping baskets and buying a weekly shop in the course of this Parliament, yes.
I mean,
every week.
Did you sign off on that as well?
Of course I saw the poster, yes.
And it didn't dawn on you that you were actually putting things on that don't have any VAT?
It's a representative image of your weekly shop. If you're wanting to argue that somehow people go to the shops and say these are vatable and these are non-vatable, respectfully I disagree.
I mean, even your rent cap announcement went wrong. Mr Miliband claimed the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors were working on the appropriate benchmark for rent rises. Turns out it wasn't, and it's actually opposed to your policy.
Well, listen, in terms of rent rises, it is the exception rather than the rule to have the position that we have at the moment. If you look, for example, at what happened in Ireland when these changes were introduced, we have seen both a continued rise in terms of the private rented sector, but also I think there is a widespread recognition that for those 9 million people in the private rented sector, change is necessary.
Are you really coordinating all this? It seems to be remarkably accident-prone, this campaign.
Oh, listen, I think if you look back even on the first week of this campaign, there's a party that has set the agenda more effectively, whether in relation to AstraZeneca, whether in relation to the reality of generation rent, whether in relation to policies like childcare, than a Conservative Party that said when David Cameron was elected he was not going to bang on about Europe. But if I'm honest, I think are now running a campaign anticipating the day after this election when we expect the Conservative Party to be engulfed in crisis. I'm proud of the fact that Labour are talking about issues like rents, like how do we secure national champions in a dynamic market economy, and I think there's a very clear contrast between a party that is talking about issues that people care about and a Conservative Party that are talking exclusively about a referendum, and a Liberal Democrat Party that I couldn't honestly tell you what they're talking about.
Are you in charge of the campaign?
Well, I'm coordinating the general election campaign.
So you are in charge?
The local and European election campaigns as well, yeah.
David Axelrod, this expensive election guru you've hired, has he been involved in any of this?
David Axelrod arrives this week for the start of our discussions with him.
Well, you're going to have to brief him about British politics.
Well, we'll have a conversation.
He doesn't know much about it. But has he been involved in any of this?
Listen, I don't make any apology for hiring David Axelrod.
Well,
I think he's
famous for negative campaigning, isn't he?
No, he's got a lot of experience of winning very tough contests and tight elections, and that's what we're expecting. But if you're expecting us, after the record of this government, to simply say, actually, they've got a pass from being held accountable for their conduct and their actions, then I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. We're going to run a balanced campaign that certainly sets out answers, but also holds this government, both the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, to account for what I think is a pretty hopeless record in government.
Okay. Douglas Alexander, thank you very much.
Thank you.